Practicing Silence. Part 2. The Fire Within the Quiet. If you are pained by external things, it is not they that disturb you, but your own judgment of them. And it is in your power to wipe out that judgment now. Marcus Aurelius. 6. The Silence in Suffering. There is a kind of silence born not from peace, but from pain. We have all known moments when words no longer serve us, when grief takes our voice, when loss renders language powerless, when betrayal echoes louder than any scream. In these moments, silence is not chosen, it is imposed. And yet, paradoxically, it holds immense power. The Stoics knew suffering intimately. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, buried children, endured war, faced plague, and ruled through treachery. And yet, in the privacy of his meditations, he wrote to himself not with rage, but with reason, with stillness, with silence. He did not lash out, he looked inward. In silence, we meet pain not with noise, but with presence. We allow it to speak, not to consume us, but to teach us. In this listening, pain loses its chaos. It becomes meaningful. It becomes transformative. To suffer in silence is not weakness. It is strength refined by fire. It is the kind of silence that does not crumble, but endures. 7. The strength to withhold. One of the greatest displays of power is restraint. It is easy to speak, easy to react, easy to argue, shout, defend, explain, accuse. But silence, the decision not to respond, not to be pulled into reaction, is an act of control so few ever master. Epictetus taught that it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. He urged us to remember that our judgments, not events themselves, cause distress. The space between stimulus and response is where our power lies. Silence creates that space. Imagine a sharp insult thrown your way. Your pride ignites, your chest tightens, your tongue readies its reply. But in that moment, you stop, you breathe, you say nothing. In that silence, you win. Not over the other person, but over yourself. That is Stoic silence. Not passive, not timid, but calm, powerful, and rooted in inner sovereignty. A refusal to be dragged into the chaos of others. It is the silence of the mountain, not because the wind doesn't howl, but because the mountain does not move. 8. The clarity of the unspoken. The modern mind is cluttered. We are flooded with input, drowning in opinions, paralyzed by the pressure to respond instantly. We forget how to think deeply, how to listen openly, how to dwell in uncertainty without panic. Silence reintroduces us to clarity. When we quiet the world outside, we begin to notice the quiet voice within, the one drowned out by urgency and ego. That voice is often softer, but wiser. It speaks not from fear, but from truth. Think of how much noise is made to avoid the real issue. We speak to defend our insecurities, to prove our worth, to mask our confusion. But the wisest among us speak little and listen long. Seneca reminds us, speech is a mirror of the soul. As a man speaks, so is he. But silence, too, reflects the soul, and often it reflects it more purely. In the pause before we speak, we reveal our character. In the silence after another has spoken, we show our respect. In our refusal to rush to answers, we show our depth. Words have power, but silence has precision. Ike. Silence as a mirror. Sit in silence long enough, and the truth will rise to the surface. We often run from silence because it unmasks us. It strips away the distractions. It reveals where we are restless, where we are clinging, where we are wounded. But in that confrontation lies the beginning of real healing. Silence is a mirror. It shows us not the curated image, but the raw reflection. And yet this is the gift. Through silence, we can begin again. You see the anger that lives in your chest, the fears that shape your choices, the regrets you carry like stones. And slowly, through presence, breath, and stillness, you begin to let go. You begin to remember who you were before the noise. The practice of silence is the practice of truth-telling, to yourself first and foremost. And from that honesty comes clarity, and from clarity comes wisdom. It is not an escape from life, it is a return to it. X. The rituals of quiet silence is not an accident. It is not a luxury reserved for monasteries or mountaintops. It is a discipline, a daily ritual of remembering who we are beneath the noise. The Stoics taught not just ideas, but practices. And silence was one of them. It began with intentional reflection, a habit built not around isolation, but around awareness. Marcus Aurelius wrote each morning in his journal before speaking a word to the world. That was his silence, his space to return to clarity before being pulled into the chaos of court and empire. So too must we carve out silence, not as an afterthought, but as a foundation. Try this. Each morning, before your phone, before your calendar, sit in silence. Even 5 minutes. No music, no input, just breath, stillness, presence. Let your thoughts wander. Observe them. Don't follow them. Just witness. And then, each evening, review the day in silence. What did you say that was unnecessary? What did you leave unsaid that mattered? Did you listen deeply? Did you rush to speak? Were your words rooted in wisdom or in ego? In this ritual, silence becomes sacred. 11. Silence in conversation. To be silent is not to withdraw from others. It is to engage them more fully. When you practice silence, you listen, not just to words, but to pauses, to what is said beneath the saying. You listen with your whole being, and in doing so, you give a gift rarer than gold, your full attention. This is true Stoic communication, not speaking to dominate, but to understand. Speak less, and your words will carry more weight. Speak mindfully, and your voice will reflect your soul. And sometimes the greatest wisdom is knowing when not to speak. When silence says more than any reply. When presence itself becomes your message. Seneca warned that the tongue can be a blade. It cuts quickly. But silence, that is the shield, the pause, the restraint that prevents harm before it begins. In conversation, practice silence as an art. Let it sculpt your speech into something meaningful, rare, and clean. 12. Silence in decision. Life demands choices. Every day we stand at the crossroads of yes and no, now and later, this path or that. And yet, how often are our choices made in haste? How often do we act without clarity? Silence is the space where wisdom can enter. Before you make a difficult decision, do not consult a dozen opinions. Consult silence. Withdraw. Breathe. Reflect. Let the noise settle. What rises from that stillness is often your true direction, not the loudest voice, but the clearest one. This is why the Stoics practiced solitude, not to avoid responsibility, but to make better decisions when it arrived. Silence is not the absence of action. It is preparation for right action. It is the moment before the archer releases the bow, the breath before the leap, the gathering of power before movement begins. If you want to live with intention, let silence be your compass. Hadrith Tintin. Silence in conflict. Perhaps nowhere is silence more powerful and more difficult than in conflict. When we are attacked, our instinct is to defend. When misunderstood, we explain. When insulted, we retaliate. But the Stoic does none of these things, not out of cowardice, but out of mastery. To respond with silence in the face of rage is not weakness, it is power refined into peace. Imagine someone yells at you. criticizes you, lies about you. You feel the storm rise within, but instead of shouting back, you say nothing. You breathe. You stand with dignity. You have chosen silence over spectacle. And in doing so, you reveal the truth without a single word. Seneca said, "A wise man is indifferent to what he cannot control. What others say is not yours. What you do with it, that is your kingdom. Choose silence, rule well." 14. The quiet mind. In the end, silence is not just about your voice. It is about your mind. You can sit in a silent room and still be overwhelmed by noise. The real silence begins not outside, but within. A quiet mind is a trained mind, one that does not chase every thought, one that does not believe every story it tells itself, one that can sit in the fire of discomfort and remain still. This is the heart of Stoicism. This is the true silence. It is not emptiness, it is presence. It is not void, it is vastness. It is not nothing, it is everything. Clarified, and the more you return to it, the more it becomes your resting place. In this silence you are free.